Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Blue Heart webcast. I'm your host, Lieutenant Joe Pangaro. So I wanted to get together just for a couple of minutes on this episode to talk about a couple of concepts about crime that you may come across as patrol officer, detective, supervisor, whatever, that helps us to define what we're looking at and make determinations about potential suspects. It could also help us if we do find a suspect in our questioning, what evidence to look for, that kind of thing. So in my book, The Investigation, I talk about want crimes and drive crimes. Now, for anybody who's watched these programs, you know that I come back to that a lot because I think it's a very, very fundamental thing to understand. Now, a want crime is the kind of crime that someone would commit because they want things. They want money. They want drugs. They want stuff you got in your house or in your car. They're willing to commit that crime, usually as a crime of opportunity, because they want things. And how do they get it? By stealing your stuff. And that's how they get it. The other kind of crime that I've identified is what I call drive crimes. Drive crimes are things that push us as human beings. They push us towards action. We see a lot of psychosexual killers or serial rapists or people who are involved in more violent kind of crimes that violate people personally. We see that they're driven to do those things. So they may be able to stop for a little while, hold off, but eventually they're driven so hard that they have got to go and do these crimes. And we see it and that's where someone may do multiple sexual assaults. They might do multiple psychosexual homicides, serial killing, that kind of thing. And the reason this came up is because recently we saw Rex Heuerman, a man out of Suffolk County, Long Island. He was charged with the murders of 8 young women over the past 20 years or so. And he dumped their bodies along Gilgo Beach in Long Island, on the southern shore of Long Island in Suffolk County. And that's why you've heard of him called the Gilgo Beach Killer, right? Because he dumped his victims along Gilgo Beach. So he pled guilty to 8 of the homicides. And one of the things that he's doing in his plea is he has agreed to sit down and be interviewed by the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit. This is really a good thing for all of us in law enforcement because the Behavioral Science Unit tries to get into the head of these people and to understand not only what they did, but why they did it. What were they thinking? What was on their mind? What drove them to commit these crimes? What planning did they do? What did they think about law enforcement? How did they evade law enforcement? If they did for a period of time, how'd they get away with it? That information will help all of us in law enforcement, no matter where you are, if you come across one of these people and you have to investigate these kinds of crimes, right? So while we have want crimes and then we have drive crimes, 2 important different concepts to understand what's the difference between the two, because that's going to make a difference in what you're going to look for in evidence. If somebody's committing a crime of opportunity, we know we usually find fingerprints or blood they leave at the scene. They cut themselves doing a burglary or a robbery. They make mistakes. And then we see in drive crimes, we see some very serious violent things. Wouldn't you like to know who you're dealing with? Because when you look for different kinds of evidence, when you have different questions to ask these people when you're talking to the suspects. There's a concept that I put forward of activating the drive. So if you have a drive crime person who's committed a drive crime, you can activate that drive by presenting certain scenarios. You can ask certain questions that activate the drive in their mind. And hopefully that drive is powerful enough that you can see a physical reaction from them. You can see their body language. You can hear it in their answers, and it will help you investigate. So Rex Heuerman pled guilty to 8 homicides, and he's going to sit and talk with the FBI Behavioral Science Unit. Very, very good. The idea that comes up is that I wanted to talk about besides want and drive crimes, and go read the book. I think it'll be very helpful to you. But the reality is there's another thing known as organized crimes and disorganized crimes, right? Organized criminals, disorganized criminals. And what's the difference between the two, and why is it important to you, the investigator? A disorganized criminal is someone who is just like it sounds. Maybe they did a crime of opportunity, right? So they climb through the back window of a house and they leave their wallet there. They leave fingerprints because they didn't think to bring gloves. It was something that just happened at the spur of the moment. They commit a robbery and they don't have a mask and they don't realize that there's cameras all around. They're very disorganized. They go through the motions and then say, oh boy, I should have thought of that, because you end up catching them, right? So that's the disorganized crime. The disorganized serial rapist is another one who may have this drive to commit these crimes. And we know, let's be very clear, that in most cases, when it comes to sexual assault, serial raping, that kind of thing, the crime is not about sex. The crime is about power, having power over another person. So if you think of the concept, if I can grab you by the arm and control you, I have a lot of power over you. If I can drag you into the bushes and you can't stop me from doing that, I have a lot of power over you. If I decide to ultimately have power over you and sexually assault you, violate your body against your will, that's a lot of power to have over someone. And when we see these psychosexual killers, we often see that sexual component, because they're having that power over the victim. It creates terror. It creates a sense of complete power in them. And then they go to the final end where they kill the person as an ultimate show of power, right? So it's when we're talking about with those kind of people. Now, the disorganized serial rapist or serial killer leaves all kinds of clues. They want to do it. They're driven to do it, but they didn't do a lot of planning. They didn't think about it. They might show up and leave DNA from body fluids. They might leave people that see things. They might leave evidence that they didn't plan on leaving. They're very disorganized, and that helps us, right? And then you have the organized crime or the organized criminal. And this is a person who does surveillance ahead of time, who knows the patterns maybe of their victims, who have, maybe they got a close call one time and they almost got caught doing what they're doing and they learned from it. So now if they go to do the burglary or the sexual assault or the kidnapping or whatever they're going to do, they bring things with them. They bring gloves, right? So they know they don't want to leave fingerprints. They might bring a mask. They might bring a kit of some kind, of toolkit, a rape kit or a burglary kit that has the tools they may need, weapons, tools, rope, whatever they might need. They bring it with them. They're thinking in advance. They know the times and the ways and the movements of their potential victims, and they look at them and they are much harder to capture because they've thought about it. They're organized. They did what they were doing and they thought it out. So an example that we can look at right now is Savannah Guthrie's mother potentially has been kidnapped. At least we think that's what happened, right? It's been going on for over a month now, and we have no suspects. Now, we have video of a suspect, and we can look at that suspect and we can say, okay, is it a want crime or is it a drive crime? Well, we won't know that until we find the victim. If it was a want crime and they wanted money and they said, okay, well, here's what I can do. I can grab Savannah Guthrie's mother because Savannah Guthrie's worth a lot of money. I can kidnap her and hold her for ransom, which they did ask for a ransom. So is it a want crime because they want money? Or is it a drive crime? Were they driven to kidnap an elderly woman, and I hate to say it, but to abuse her physically, to sexually assault her, to kill her? Is that was the reason for the crime, right? We won't know that till we find Mrs. Guthrie. In whatever condition we find her, we can then determine if it was a want crime or a drive crime. Right now, it looks like a want crime. They asked for a ransom. They wanted money, right? And then we can say to ourselves, is the criminal organized or disorganized? Well, let's look at what we know. There are videos of this individual. There's information that has come out, and I'm not privy to the evidence, but this is what I've heard from news reports. is that they got video of this individual maybe the day before or a couple days before around the house. They caught him on video. So is he doing surveillance of the house? Is he preparing to do this crime? That's more organized than someone who just, hey, I know Savannah's mother lives up the street. I'll go grab her and get her for a ransom, right? So we think that may have happened because we see him on the video and he's blocking his face. He's wearing gloves. On the day of the kidnapping, we see him come up to the front door and he's wearing a mask to block his face. He's wearing gloves, maybe 2 pairs of gloves to prevent leaving fingerprints. And he's carrying some kind of a backpack. What's in the backpack? His lunch? Or is there things that he needs to commit the crime? Are there tools? Are there weapons? Is there chloroform? Are there zip ties or whatever he might need to incapacitate the victim? So when we look at that particular case, which is in the news every day, we can get a lot of cues, not clues, cues as to whether this person is a disorganized or organized criminal. Appears to be organized, appears to be some pre-planning, some thought about conditions during the crime, covering the face so they can't be spotted. And to this day, we don't have a suspect. So those tactics have worked so far. Right now, we have to see. There's been a lot of recovery looking for evidence, forensic evidence. Maybe there's some DNA. Maybe something was left behind that they didn't think of. But in general, this looks to me like a want crime and an organized criminal. Now, it could turn out that it's, a drive crime and the person is organized. There's lots of different options. But you should know the difference between want crime and drive crime. And you should know the difference between a disorganized criminal and crime and an organized criminal and crime. You're going to come across them. It helps you as you're investigating it, no matter what your position is in the agency, to make some investigative hypothesis based on what the evidence that you see. What's it tell you about the perpetrator? The crime scene will talk to you, as well as giving you some insight into who this person was and what they're all about. Now, when you develop a suspect, wouldn't it be good to know that it was a drive crime and you can activate their drive and get them to say things that could be incriminating? Wouldn't it be good to know that they were organized? And what are you looking for? Well, in your search warrant, you're looking for that backpack. You're looking for those gloves. You're looking for the mask. You're looking for anything that they left behind in evidence. So understanding those concepts is very important to you, the investigator, at any level of investigation. Patrol, detective, supervisor, doesn't matter. Right? So I wanted to bring that up for us tonight and start thinking about it. And again, get my book, The Investigation, from Blue 360 Media. They're one of our sponsors. They're absolutely amazing. And the book is really good. I think it'll really help you. So I want to thank you for being here. Thanks for supporting us. Remember, like, share, subscribe, all those things you're supposed to do for the program. And we will see you down the road.